a children's lit author with some great new content to share, a pastor with a love for writing YA science fiction adventures. Better buckle up because in this month we are launching into another epic episode of The Right Way. Hey, I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones, and welcome back to The Right Way, where we talk book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. Now, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and click the bell for notifications on new videos. I've got some great new segments for this month's episode, but I want to share some important dates with you. Last month, I launched my newest book, Midnight Playground, a collected anthology of original short stories on Monday, February 17th. Copies are now available on Kindle and paperback through Amazon, and if you'd like to get your very own signed copy, you can order the book directly from me from my link on Square. I am in the process of developing the audiobook, and I'll have more information about that as soon as I have something to share. In the meantime, take a look at this trailer for the book. Stories and the art of telling them take different forms. Some stories are brief, lasting less than a page, while others take more than a simple breath to tell. And if telling a story is breathing out, then reading one is breathing in. Some breaths make us laugh, others inspire love or intrigue, while still others cause us to gasp with fear. From romance to comedy to action to horror, fantasy novelist Garrett K. Jones offers readers a collection of short stories meant to excite and fascinate with equal measure as he invites you into the midnight playground where creativity and storytelling flourish. Secondly, we are steadily marching into spring.
Oh, okay. I see what you did there.
And that means we are quickly coming up on the Author Awareness April Marathon. So let me explain how this is going to play out. 2 weeks from today, the spring preview will air on YouTube on Saturday, March 29th. The week after that, I will have a new episode every Saturday throughout the month of April. 4 Saturdays means 4 brand new interviews with some amazing authors, including one that you've already seen this season in other segments. I won't announce the names of those authors until the spring preview, so they're going to remain my closely guarded secret. However, I will be releasing all 4 uncut, unedited interviews on Patreon the same day as the spring preview. Lastly, this past Monday, I was featured as a guest host on the Speculative Sandbox podcast hosted by Vicky Land during an author takeover. The episode featured a more in-depth discussion regarding writer's block taken from last week's writing workshop livestream. It was a great opportunity to join Vicky's podcast. I was featured on her show back in October doing a full conversation with her, and it was a great opportunity to help her out since she was going on vacation. If you want to check out the episode, you can find that linked down in the video description. This month we are getting another double dose of the author guest host I've invited onto the show. Last month, Paul D. Smith provided you with his list, and for March, I've invited my friend and fellow local author, Claire Annette Noland, to return to the show and share her 10 picks for this month's list. Take it away, Claire.
Hey, my name is Claire Noland, and I am an author of picture books, board books, magazines, all sorts of things. But I do prioritize picture books. I'm excited to be here again to celebrate my top 10 books in the category of making do with what you have. This is my book, Nancy Best Had a Dress, published by Gnome Road Publishers, and the illustrator is Angela C. Hawkins. It tells the story of a young girl. It's set in the Depression in California in the 30s, where people had to make do with what they had. She gets a flour sack, which she makes a dress, but when she outgrows it, she makes it into something new until she's left with just scraps and figures out something very fun to do with the scraps. Another maker book, the classic, is Joseph Had a Little Overcoat by Sims Taback. It's a Yiddish story about a man who has a coat, but it gets frayed and old, and he also makes it into different things. The story Small Things Mended by Casey Robinson and illustrated by Nancy Whiteside tells a story about a man who's lonely, but a child needs some help fixing things, so he does that. Well, soon everybody comes to help to have things fixed. But what happens when a young girl comes with her toy elephant that has a broken heart? He finds a very clever way to do that and also a way to make friends. Paula's Patch tells a story of a girl who is from a very impoverished family, and her clothes have holes and are torn, and she learns how to fix them and keep using them, and she helps her other friends to do the same. Made by Maxine by Ruth Stone and Holly Haddam is a very fun book about an enterprising girl who can make a lot of things, but how is she going to get her goldfish in the parade? Read it and find out. Do-It-Yourself Dollhouse by Shannon Anderson with illustrations by Julia Pintas is a sweet book about a girl who makes a dollhouse out of boxes. And her friend, who has just a plastic one, learns it's much more fun to use your imagination. Be a Maker by Katie Howes with illustrations by Elizabeth Vukovic tells all sorts of different ways that you can find things around and make new things. To Make by Danielle Davis with pictures by Mags DeRoma is another one, encouraging children to gather and make fun things. Keep making. This is a nonfiction biography called Dressing Up the Stars, the story of movie costume designer Edith Head, written by Jean Walker Harvey with illustrations by Diana Toledano. This is about a famous woman who grew up in the desert and dressed up her animals with different things that she found around. And she went on to become an Oscar award-winning fashion designer. Ada's Violin is by Susan Hood with illustrations by Sally Wern Comport will just tug at your heartstrings. This is a true story about children who live around a dump, and a man who comes and helps them make instruments, and they form an orchestra made from instruments from recycled goods and travel around the world inspiring people. Finally, number 10, I have Harriet Power's Journey from Slave to Artist in Sewing Stories by Barbara Herkert and illustrated by Vanessa Brantley Newton. It tells the story of young Harriet who made a quilt and was on a plantation, and they kept their stories alive through quilts. So all of these books are here to encourage people to use what you have and make the best using your imagination. Thanks for joining me.
I'll have more from Claire for Creator's Corner in just a bit, but if you're interested in picking up any of the titles she recommended, you'll find those books and their ISBN numbers listed down in the video description. So I connected with this month's interviewee through Instagram when I was looking for guests, and Tommy-Lee Sexton was one of the first to sign up. It was an awesome conversation, and I'm happy to share it with you now. Tommy, thank you for joining me on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. So tell me about what you write and a little bit about yourself as an author.
So I write young adult science fiction. I've got one book published right now, working on another, and I just really, as an author, I just really like writing and creating stories, creating new worlds, and worlds where teenagers kind of have to figure out, how do we do life? How do we exist with this new information that we've gotten? There's an alien invasion going on, and we have to fight it off. How do we manage this while also having to have our normal life of high school and all that?
That's pretty. What's your book called, and what can you give us a brief synopsis of what happens?
Sure. So it's called Eye of Destiny. And basically, these three brothers discover that their dad is running a secret organization to stop an impending alien invasion, which he's kept secret from them and from everybody else. And so they discover this, but in the midst of that, the aliens that are invading come before anyone expects them. And their dad, who is training and getting ready for, trained professionals to take up this armor he's created and fight off the aliens, that plan just falls to shreds, and it winds up being that the three brothers become the ones to fight the aliens that are coming along with their dad.
How'd you get into writing? Was this something you've always wanted to do, or did like you got to this point where you're like, I've got this idea for a story, and I want to write it down and see where it takes me?
I've always loved making up stories. I can't remember a time when I didn't. And I think probably around like fourth grade, I would start writing just random scripts, and they were always like Power Ranger scripts. It's like, oh, this is going to be a Power Ranger episode or whatever. And that evolved into me coming up with more original stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I started writing this particular story as a series of screenplays, just for fun. In I think it was like seventh grade. Just kind of wrote them for fun, and be like, oh, it'd be cool if this was a television series or whatever. But it's like that's never really going to happen. And finally, after I got married, I thought to myself, maybe I'm gonna try to write this as a book and see how it goes. And so much of the story changed during that time. But yeah, I've always just loved it. And these characters from seventh grade on have kind of lived rent free in my head. They won't leave me alone. So if I didn't write about them, I would never have a normal, quiet life.
What are some of your influences as a writer? Obviously, Power Rangers was one that you just referenced, and same for me. But what are some other influences that you've had as a writer?
I would say definitely Animorphs. That was one of my entries into sci-fi as a kid. Scholastic had this subscription where every month you'd get 3 books or whatever, and I would devour those. So that probably is a big one, and I'm blanking on all the other ones. but I would say that the Animorphs really was definitely as far as that a sci-fi influence. Alex Rider as well, the Alex Rider series.
Mm-hmm. What has been one of the biggest challenges or the biggest obstacles that you've faced in the creation of what you write with Eye of Destiny?
I think a few things. One, for me, the creation of everything and doing all that, it flows, it's fun, but it's when you get to the point where you have to go back over the story and edit. I enjoy the editing, I enjoy adding things and tweaking things, but I don't know when to stop. So I will go over it a million times, and for me, it's challenging to say, okay, we're done now. If this is a comma instead of a period, it's not a big deal or whatever.
Yeah.
Or if this character says this a certain way, it's fine. It doesn't have to, be.
Yeah. Tommy, if you were to give any would-be writers out there advice on the writing side of things, on the editing side of things, on the publication side of things, what advice would you give them?
I would say just write something. And what I mean by that is so often we can sit down and be like, okay, I have to write a certain number of words, or I have to write a certain scene. And there are times where we sit down and we're staring at a blank page, and it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go with this, and just write something. It doesn't even have to be something that you wind up putting in your story, but just, hey, these are my characters, this could work, and it might spark an idea for something that you will put in your story. And also just realize that you are going to be your own worst critic, and so you are going to sit down. I mean, if you've never written before and you don't know this, you need to know this. You're going to sit down and you're going to be writing something. You're going to think it's golden, amazing. You're going to look at it the next day and think it's trash. Doesn't mean it is trash. May mean it needs some tweaking. I mean, it might mean it's trash, but you can start
out, but it could be really awesome later.
Yeah, exactly. So just don't be so hard on yourself. That's the thing I struggle with the most is, oh man, is this really just so terrible? And well, maybe it's not. It's just that we're so self-critical as writers, as creatives.
Yeah.
Give yourself a chance to flesh things out, and your first draft is not going to be your final copy.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's great advice, Tommy. Thank you. So how can people get a hold of you? How can they get copies of Eye of Destiny?
So Eye of Destiny is available on Amazon. And get in touch with me through Instagram or my website. My website's TommyLeeWrites.com, and then Instagram is also Tommy-Lee Writes. I have a Facebook too, but I'm not on it very often, so Instagram's probably the better option.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. Awesome. Well, Tommy, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Been great to be here. Thank you so much.
A big thank you to Tommy for being the March Author Awareness interviewee. Now, if you'd like to connect with him or get copies of his work, you can find those links down in the video description. You can also catch the unedited version of this conversation through my support page on Patreon. So we're back with our second segment featuring Claire Annette Noland. She has a wealth of experience in both the independent and small press publishing circles, and it's my hope her tips will help those of you watching.
I am coming today on Garrett Jones's podcast to give a few tips on writing. One of the things that I find is most important is choosing the right word. There's a great quote from Mark Twain that says the difference between the almost right word and the right word is the difference between a lightning bug and lightning. There's quite a difference there. So what I use are these books. This one is called the Word Book. It is the Children's Writer's Word Book. You can look a word up in here and they will give you a list of other words, of synonyms, but it'll also tell you the grade level. So this is a really good book if you're writing for children. The next book is called The Emotion Thesaurus. You can look up any emotion from, this is despair, anger, frustration, and it will give you the definition of the word and giving you physical signs and behaviors and mental responses and all sorts of different things to use. So this is a great book if you're struggling with show, don't tell, and you need physical reactions to things to put into your writing. Finally, I have this book called The Flip Dictionary, and it's when you know what you want to say, but you just can't quite get the right word. For instance, I just recently sold a book on collective nouns, and this gives a whole different list of groups, such as a pod, a group, a covey, just different words for using groups. So this is a very fun one. Now I have an exercise for you. What you need to do, it's called a word whirl. Take some words that are in your book that you're working on and try to find better ones. We tend to use the same words over and over, which makes our writing super boring. So, for instance, I just am in the process of writing a book about sea animals in the ocean. It's a picture book. So I needed different words for swim, different words for search because one of the characters loses something important, and just different types of movement of sea animals like snails, sea snails and crabs and things like that. So I wrote down, for instance, the word swim, and I came up with float, glide, paddle, stroke, plunge, and drift. And those all have different feelings about them, but actually in the story I'm using, I can use them all. So Give yourself a chance to play, find fun words, and don't use the same ones over and over. I am on Instagram at Claire Annette Noland Books, and I will do a post sharing these books and where you can find them. And thanks, and happy writing.
A big thank you to Claire for being this month's Top 10s and Creators Corner guest host. Now, if you'd like to connect with her and check out her work, you can find those links to all her socials, her website, and books down in the video description. Hey, thanks for watching. If you haven't done so by this point in the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications on new videos just like this one. If you're interested in being a channel supporter, you can find links for Patreon and the merch store on Teespring. Or if you'd like to make a one-time donation, you can find my link for Cash App. Make sure to tune in on March 29th for the spring preview. I'll be providing viewers with the roundup for this year's interview marathon, kicking off the following week on April 5th. I'll see you then.